Whispers in the Wind, a story of magic and wonder. The village of Eloria sat quietly between emerald hills and silver rivers. It was a place where stories traveled faster than the seasons and where the wind carried secrets to those who listened closely. Most people in Eloria paid no attention to the murmurs that came from the fields or the forests, dismissing them as tricks of the breeze. But there was one girl who listened always. Her name was Lira. Lira was 16, with eyes the color of storm clouds and hair that shimmered like sunlight through leaves. She often climbed to the top of the old windmill that overlooked the valley, where she would sit for hours, feeling the wind brush against her face, as if whispering things only she could hear. Her grandmother used to tell her, "The wind remembers, child. It carries voices from long ago, some kind, some dangerous." Lira believed her. On the morning the story truly began, the air was strangely still. The fields of wheat stood motionless, the leaves refused to dance, and even the river seemed to pause its endless chatter. Lira felt it before anyone else, a silence that did not belong. Then, softly, came a whisper. It wasn't a normal sound. It was like music made of sighs, soft but clear, calling her name. "Lira, come." She froze. The voice came again, drifting through the air from the direction of the old forest, the one everyone avoided after sunset. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind, "Never follow the wind when it calls your name." But curiosity was stronger than fear. As she stepped closer to the forest, the stillness broke. The trees began to stir, and the air grew cooler. The wind tugged at her hair, playful and wild, as if leading her deeper. There, between two ancient oak trees, stood something she had never seen before, a small stone arch, half buried under moss. Strange symbols were carved into it, glowing faintly with silver light. The whisper grew louder. "Free me." Lira reached out and touched one of the symbols. The moment her fingers brushed the stone, a gust of wind burst through the forest, swirling around her in a spiraling dance. Leaves flew, her cloak lifted, and for a second, everything shimmered with golden light. Then she saw him, a boy no older than her, standing inside the arch, his form half transparent, like a ghost made of mist. His eyes were bright and full of sorrow. "Who are you?" she asked. "I am Aaron," he said, "and I have been trapped by the silence for 100 years. That night, Lira couldn't sleep. The image of Aaron haunted her mind, the way the wind had wrapped around him, the sadness in his voice. When dawn broke, she returned to the forest, bringing a lantern and her grandmother's old journal filled with stories of magic. She found Aaron waiting, still bound within the stone arch. His expression softened when he saw her. "You came back," he said quietly. "I had to," Lira replied. "I want to help you." Aaron smiled faintly. "Then you must listen to the wind." He told her of a time when Eloria was not an ordinary village, but part of a great realm of magic called Etheris. In that age, the wind was alive. It carried songs, dreams, and the voices of the spirits. Aaron had been one of the Windborn, beings who guarded the balance between the mortal world and the elements. But something terrible had happened, a spell gone wrong, a silence that swallowed sound and sealed the gate between realms. Aaron had been caught in that silence, trapped between worlds ever since. "The silence grows," Aaron said. "If it breaks free again, the winds will die and your world with them." Lira's heart trembled. "Then we have to stop it." Aaron's eyes glimmered like moonlight. "Only one born with the gift of hearing the wind can restore the bond. That is why it called you." Lira remembered the whispers she had always heard since childhood. She thought they were dreams, but now she knew they were real. Aaron reached out his hand, and though faint, she could feel his touch, a cool breeze brushing against her skin. "Will you help me, Lira of Eloria?" She nodded. The forest stirred, as if the trees themselves approved. The wind picked up, carrying a soft melody that danced around them both. And in that moment, Lira knew her life was about to change forever. That evening, as she returned home, her grandmother was waiting by the fire. The old woman looked up, eyes filled with worry. You went into the forest, didn't you? Lira hesitated. Yes. Her grandmother sighed deeply. Then you've heard the whispers of Etheris. Lyra's eyes widened. You know about it? I once did, her grandmother whispered. But I turned away from that path long ago. Magic demands more than most can give. Then teach me, Lira said. Please. I need to help someone. Her grandmother studied her for a long time, then nodded slowly. Very well. But remember, the wind gives, and the wind takes. Never forget that. That night, the wind returned to Lyra's window. It carried Aaron's voice, soft, warm, and hopeful. Tomorrow, he said, the journey begins. And far beyond the hills, in the realm between worlds, something ancient stirred, a whisper in the dark, waiting to be heard once more. Morning arrived draped in a thin veil of mist. The valley shimmered with dew, and the sound of the river returned like a sigh of relief after a long silence. Lira dressed quickly, her heart racing with purpose. She packed her grandmother's journal, a loaf of bread, a flask of water, and a small silver pendant shaped like a feather, the one her mother had left behind before disappearing years ago. Her grandmother watched quietly from the doorway as Lira prepared to leave. Once you cross into the forest again, the old woman said softly, you won't just be walking through trees. The paths there shift with the wind. Trust your heart more than your eyes. Lira nodded. I will come back, I promise. Her grandmother smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides a worry too deep for words. The wind will guide you, my child. But beware, if you hear it speak in anger, run. With that, Lira stepped out into the mist. The forest of Eloria was no ordinary place. As Lira entered, the air seemed alive, filled with whispers, sighs, and faint laughter. The light that filtered through the branches looked softer, almost golden. It felt as though the trees recognized her. The wind guided her to the ancient stone arch once more. Aaron appeared within the glowing runes, looking stronger than before. His form was clearer now. The mist around him shimmered faintly with blue light. You came back, he said, smiling. I said I would. Lira held up the journal. My grandmother once studied the old songs of Etheris. Maybe this will help free you. Aaron's gaze fell on the book, and his eyes widened. That symbol. He pointed to the cover, where a spiral of wind was carved in silver. That's the seal of the Whispering Stones. It's the key to restoring balance. What are the Whispering Stones? Lira asked. They're not just stones, Aaron explained. They are memories, echoes of the first winds that gave life to the world. There are 4 of them, hidden across the land, one for each direction, north, south, east, and west. Each guards a piece of the wind's voice. To break my curse and awaken Etheris, they must be found and their songs united once more. Lira listened, her heart both fearful and full of wonder. Where do we start? The first lies to the east, Aaron said, in the Valley of Echoes. But beware, the silence that imprisoned me lingers there. It feeds on fear and forgetfulness. He extended his hand, and this time, when Lira reached out, her fingers brushed something solid. A rush of air swirled around them, and the world shifted. For a moment, Lira saw flashes, mountains made of crystal, rivers of light, a vast sky filled with floating islands, and then the vision faded. The forest returned, and Aaron looked drained, fading slightly. The wind will carry you, he whispered. I cannot go far beyond this place yet. But you'll hear me when you need to. Remember the Song of the Stones. It begins with listening. Lira nodded, clutching the journal tightly. I won't fail. The journey to the Valley of Echoes was long and strange. The forest paths twisted in ways that didn't make sense. What looked like a few steps would stretch into miles, and sometimes she felt as if she was walking through dreams. She saw flickers of the past in the corners of her vision. Children laughing, people singing, a city that once floated among clouds. Once, she stopped to rest beside a stream, and the wind formed words across the water's surface. Do not lose your name. She frowned. My name? The words scattered with the next breeze, leaving her uneasy. When she finally reached the valley, the world grew quiet again. Too quiet. The air felt heavy, and her footsteps made no sound. The valley was filled with tall stone pillars, each carved with strange runes. They shimmered faintly, as though holding back something unseen. Lira approached the nearest one and placed her hand upon it. Instantly, a sound like a heartbeat filled the air. The runes glowed, and the whisper of Aaron's voice echoed through the valley. Lira, I'll listen closely. The stones remember, but they will not speak until you give them your voice. My voice, she whispered. The wind listens to those who dare to sing back. She took a deep breath and began to hum, a soft tune her grandmother used to sing when storms gathered. The sound trembled at first, weak and uncertain, but soon the valley began to respond. The pillars hummed in harmony, and the air vibrated with magic. Then, a sudden chill swept through her. The light from the stones dimmed, and a new whisper rose, low, hollow, and wrong. Silence belongs here. A shadow began to crawl out from between the stones, a dark mist, twisting like smoke. It had no face, but Lira could feel its hunger. Her heart pounded. Aaron's voice echoed faintly, carried by the wind. Don't let it take your name. Lira closed her eyes and sang louder. Her voice rose like a current, trembling with fear, but also strength. The melody filled the valley, and the shadow shrieked, pulling back. The runes blazed with light, and the darkness dissolved into nothing. When the last note faded, the wind returned, soft, gentle, carrying a whisper of gratitude. You have awakened the first stone, Aaron's voice said. Its song is now part of you. Lira knelt, exhausted. The nearest pillar shimmered and released a small crystal shaped like a tear, glowing faintly with blue light. She picked it up, feeling its warmth pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. The wind's tear, she murmured. Keep it close, Aaron whispered. You've only begun. As Lira made her way back through the forest, she noticed something had changed. The trees bowed slightly when she passed, and the air hummed softly around her, almost as if recognizing her as one of its own. By the time she reached the old windmill, dusk had fallen. Her grandmother was waiting at the gate, a lantern in hand. You've found one of them, the old woman said quietly, her eyes fixed on the glowing crystal. Lira nodded. Yes. But something tried to stop me. Her grandmother's face grew grim. The silence. It is older than magic and feeds on the fear of forgetting. The more stones you awaken, the stronger it will become. You must be careful, Lira. You are walking the same path your mother once did. My mother? Lira's heart skipped. She knew about this? She was the last wind listener before you, her grandmother said. And she vanished searching for the final stone. Lira looked at the crystal in her hand and felt the wind brush against her cheek like a promise. Then I'll finish what she started. The wind swirled softly around them, carrying a faint, distant whisper. Aaron's voice again, quiet and full of hope. The second stone lies in the north, where the mountains sing. And somewhere, far away, in the icy peaks beyond the valley, the wind stirred, preparing for her next step. The northern sky was wide and white, filled with drifting clouds that looked like feathers. Lira walked through a world of frost and whispering air, her cloak heavy with snow. It had been 3 days since she left Eloria, guided only by Aaron's faint voice that came and went with the wind. The path wound upward into the Silver Peak Mountains, where even the rivers were frozen into still music. Every few steps, she could hear faint humming, like a distant choir made of ice. The wind up here was sharp and alive, whispering words she could almost understand. Keep going, Lira. Aaron's voice brushed her ear. The mountain remembers. She touched the wind's tear around her neck, the small blue crystal glowing faintly through the cold. It warmed her whenever she felt her strength falter. That evening, she found a small cave and built a fire from dried twigs. The cave walls glistened with ice crystals that sparkled like tiny stars. As she sat, unwrapping a bit of bread, she opened her grandmother's old journal. The ink had faded, but one passage caught her eye. When the wind sleeps beneath the snow, the mountain sings the memory of those lost to silence. Lira traced the words with her finger. The mountain sings, she whispered. Then maybe that's where the next stone is. Outside, the wind rose suddenly. It howled through the cave mouth, not angrily, but with urgency. Lira stood, grabbing her lantern. Show me, she said softly. The flame flickered, and the air twisted into a swirl of pale light. The wind lifted snowflakes into shapes, faces, voices, echoes, and then drifted toward a narrow path leading deeper into the mountain. She followed. The path opened into a great hollow carved by time, a vast cavern filled with crystal pillars and frozen waterfalls. The air was so clear it hummed like a stringed instrument. In the center stood a tall spire of ice, shaped like a harp made of light. Lira approached slowly, on her eyes. The whispers grew louder. Sing, sing, so we may awaken. She placed her hands on the icy harp. It was cold enough to sting, but she could feel the air moving through its strings, forming soft, trembling notes. Is this the second stone? She asked aloud. Aaron's voice came faintly. It is the stone of song, keeper of the north wind. It has slept for too long. Wake it, and the silence will stir again. Be ready. Lira nodded. She took a deep breath and began to hum. At first, the sound was small, just her breath trembling through the ice. But soon, the harp began to play itself, wind passing through its frozen strings in harmony with her voice. Music filled the cavern, bright and haunting, echoing against the walls. The crystals began to glow with pale blue light. Then the ground shuddered. The song faltered as a crack split the ice floor. A shadow poured from it, dark, thick, and shifting like smoke. It rose high, spreading across the ceiling. Silence, it hissed. You cannot bring back what was meant to fade. Lira stepped back, clutching the wind's tear. Her heart pounded. Aaron, she cried. The wind answered, not as a voice this time, but as a surge of air that swirled around her like a shield. Aaron's voice came within it, fierce and strong. Do not let it steal your song, Lira. The silence devours sound. Fight it with life. She looked up, fear tightening her throat. The shadow reached for her, its edges whispering with stolen voices, cries, laughter, and songs long forgotten. Tears filled her eyes. She closed them and sang again, louder, stronger, defying the cold and the dark. Her song rose, weaving with the wind. The icy harp responded, its strings glowing gold and blue. The cavern shone like dawn. The shadows shrieked and scattered into shards of dark mist that dissolved into the air. When the last echo faded, silence returned, but it was a peaceful kind of silence, the kind that follows harmony. The harp pulsed once, then released a fragment of light, a crystal shaped like a feather of ice. It floated toward Lira, landing gently in her palm. The north feather, Aaron whispered, his voice calm again. You've done it. Lira smiled weakly, the glow from the crystal warming her frozen fingers. But before she could speak, Aaron's voice faltered. Lira, be careful. Each stone you awaken weakens the barrier that holds me and the silence. If it breaks too soon, his voice faded completely. The wind stopped. Lira stood alone in the glowing cavern, uneasy. The air felt heavy, almost watchful. She tucked the north feather beside the wind's tear, whispering, Hold on, Aaron. I'll find the rest. On her way down the mountain, she saw strange shapes in the snow, footprints too large and too deep to belong to any human. They led toward the forest below. By dusk, as she reached the foothills, the wind returned, different this time. It was softer, carrying not Aaron's voice but a woman's. Lira, it whispered, familiar and gentle. My brave girl. Her heart stopped. Mother. The wind swirled around her, forming the faint outline of a woman, tall, graceful, with hair like silver mist. Lira's eyes filled with tears. Is it really you? She whispered. The voice came like a sigh. You walk the path I could not finish. The silence grew too strong. But you are the one who can end it. Lira reached out, but the image flickered. "Don't go. Please, tell me what to do." Her mother's voice trembled. "The third stone lies to the west, where the sands never sleep. Beware the whisper that lies within you. It is not always the wind." And with that, the vision faded, leaving only falling snow. Lira sank to her knees, clutching both crystals close. Her heart ached, but her resolve burned brighter than ever. "I'll find them all," she whispered. "For you, for Aaron, for everyone." The wind rose again, circling her like a promise. And far away, deep in the deserts of the west, a storm began to gather, carrying whispers that would soon call her name again. The desert stretched endlessly before Lira, golden dunes rolling like waves under a burning sky. The wind here was different, slower and heavier, filled with whispers that sounded almost like sighs. It carried the scent of dust, time, and forgotten memories. 3 days had passed since she had left the mountains. The warmth of the sand pressed against her boots, and each step felt heavier than the last. The 2 crystals she carried, the wind's tear and the north feather, glowed faintly in her pouch, guiding her westward whenever she began to lose her way. But the desert was not kind. By the second night, she began to see shapes dancing at the edge of her vision, mirages of rivers and trees that vanished when she reached for them. The air shimmered, and sometimes she heard voices calling softly behind her. "Lira." She spun around. No one was there. The whispers followed her. On the 4th day, she came across a stretch of ancient stone half buried beneath the sand. Symbols were carved into it, spirals, waves, and feathers, like the ones on the other stones she had seen before. At the center of the stone was an opening, a narrow stairway leading down into the ground. A cool breeze rose from it, brushing her face like a sigh of relief. "The third stone," she murmured. As she stepped down, the world above grew distant. The air below was cool and filled with faint echoes, like hundreds of whispers overlapping. Torches lit themselves along the walls as she passed, revealing carvings of people with wings of wind and eyes full of stars. In the heart of the underground chamber stood a great crystal pillar. Inside it shimmered waves of gold and silver, and the whispering grew louder. Aaron's faint voice came through the wind again. "Lira, this is the stone of echoes, the keeper of memory and illusion. Be careful, it knows your heart." Lira approached. "What do I do?" "Listen," Aaron said, "and speak your truth. The stone only reveals itself to those who remember who they are." She nodded slowly and placed her hands on the crystal. It was warm, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. The whispers suddenly stopped, and the silence that followed felt heavy, too heavy. Then she heard a familiar voice. "Lira." Her breath caught. Her mother stood before her again, not as wind this time, but real, solid, smiling softly. "Mother." The woman reached out, touching her cheek. "You've done so well, my sweet child. You've found what I could not." Tears welled in Lira's eyes. "You're really here?" Her mother nodded. "Yes, and I can take you home. You don't have to keep fighting. The silence is gone. You can rest." The words filled Lira's heart like warmth, but something inside her hesitated. The air around them was too still. The wind did not move. She looked down. Her mother's hand left no imprint in the sand. "No," Lira whispered. "You're not her." The woman's expression flickered, and the smile twisted. "Clever child." The illusion shattered like glass, and the chamber darkened. The whispers turned to hissing laughter. Shadows crept along the walls, forming faces, hundreds of them, echoes of people long forgotten. The silence had found her again. Aaron's voice burst through the chaos. "Remember who you are, Lira. It feeds on doubt, on your fear of being alone." The shadows closed in, their voices overlapping. "You were never chosen. You cannot save anyone. Even your mother failed." Lira pressed her palms against the crystal and screamed, "Stop." The wind's tear and the north feather began to glow through her pouch, spilling light across the chamber. "I am Lira of Eloria," she shouted, "daughter of the wind, listener of voices, and keeper of the song. You will not silence me. The crystal responded to her cry. Light erupted from it, golden and fierce. The shadows screamed and disintegrated into mist. The air filled with the sound of rushing wind and soft, melodic whispers, this time full of joy. When the brilliance faded, the crystal pillar cracked open. From within floated a third fragment, an orb of amber light, shaped like a swirling gust of sand. Lira caught it gently in her hands. The desert heart, Aaron's voice said softly. You've awakened it. The third song is yours. She fell to her knees, breathing hard, tears glistening in her eyes. The air around her hummed softly with life again. When she returned to the surface, the sun was setting. The sky burned orange and purple, and the wind carried a coolness she hadn't felt before, as if the desert itself was alive once more. For a moment, everything was peaceful. Then, Aaron's voice came again, strained and distant. Lira, the silence grows stronger. Every stone you awaken weakens the veil between realms. You must hurry to the last one before it breaks. Where is it? She asked, clutching the desert heart tightly. In the east, Aaron whispered. The place where the first wind was born, the Sea of Mirrors. The wind paused, and for the first time, his voice trembled. And when you find it, you'll have to choose. Choose. But the wind faded before he could explain. Lira began her journey east, crossing valleys and rivers now alive with music. The world around her seemed to awaken, the air cleaner, the skies brighter, and the whispers gentler. Villagers she passed spoke of sudden gusts of cool wind that came with laughter in their ears, or of old songs that returned to the air after generations. But at night, when the stars fell silent, she could still feel something watching her, something vast and hungry, waiting in the stillness. One evening, as she rested beneath a cluster of willows by a river, the air grew eerily calm. No crickets, no wind, just quiet. Then came a voice, soft, echoing from within her own mind. Lira. It was Aaron's voice, but deeper, hollow. She stood up sharply. Aaron. Yes, it said. But I need you to listen. You cannot trust the last stone. It is the source of the silence. It created me. It called you here for its own end. Lira froze. That's not true. Isn't it? The voice said. You've never seen me outside the wind, have you? Maybe I was never trapped. Maybe I am the silence itself. Her heart pounded. The river rippled, though there was no breeze. No, she whispered. You're lying. The voice laughed softly. Am I? The stillness broke suddenly as a true gust of wind tore through the trees. Aaron's real voice came, strong and clear. Lira, don't listen. It's the silence pretending to be me. She gasped, tears of confusion in her eyes. Then how do I know who's real? You'll know, Aaron said. The true wind never commands, it only asks. The false voice vanished with a hiss, and the night returned to normal. Lira sank to her knees, trembling. The stars glittered faintly above her, and the real wind brushed her hair, soft as a promise. I trust you, Aaron, she whispered. Whatever comes next, I'll face it. And so, with 3 stones awakened and 1 remaining, she set her eyes toward the eastern sea, where dawn began to rise in silver light. The final whisper was waiting, the eastern horizon shimmered with silver light. Beyond the green valleys and the whispering woods lay the Sea of Mirrors, a vast stretch of calm water that reflected the skies so perfectly that it was impossible to tell where the world ended and heaven began. Lira stood at its edge, her cloak fluttering in the wind. Around her neck hung the 3 relics, the wind's tear, the north feather, and the desert heart, each glowing softly like stars caught in daylight. The journey had left her weary, but stronger than ever. The wind was restless here, swirling in strange patterns, as if unsure of its own direction. Aaron's voice came to her faintly. This is where the first wind was born and where it was silenced. She looked out over the shimmering waters. The last stone is here, isn't it? Yes, Aaron replied, his tone filled with both hope and sorrow. But so is the heart of the silence. What happens now will decide everything. As Lira stepped onto the water's edge, ripples spread beneath her boots. The air grew colder. The whispers that had once guided her now turned to murmurs of warning. She walked forward, and the water did not swallow her. Instead, it solidified beneath her feet, reflecting her every movement like glass. In the center of the endless sea stood a tower of light, a column of wind and water twisting together, shimmering with the colors of dawn. Within it, she could see the fourth stone, the heart of the first wind, pulsing softly. She began to walk toward it, her reflection following below her. But halfway across, the reflection began to move differently. It stopped when she stepped. It smiled when she didn't. And then it spoke. "Why do you fight for the wind, Lira? Why save a world that forgets its magic?" Lira froze. "You're not me." The reflection tilted its head. "Aren't I? I am every doubt you ever whispered to yourself. Every time you thought you weren't enough. I am the voice that hides beneath your courage." The wind around them slowed. The water darkened. Aaron's voice called out, faint but urgent. "Lira, don't listen. It's the silence taking your shape." The reflection's smile widened. "He's afraid you'll see the truth. He's not your savior, Lira. He's the reason the silence exists." Lira's heart pounded. "That's a lie." "Is it?" The reflection said softly. "He said he was trapped 100 years ago, didn't he? But he never told you why." Lira turned toward the wind, shouting, "Aaron, tell me the truth." There was a long pause. Then, in the quietest whisper, Aaron said, "I was the one who created it." Her breath caught. "What?" "I tried to give the wind a body," Aaron said, his voice trembling like a leaf in a storm. "To make the songs eternal, so they could never fade from the world. But the spell went wrong. It turned part of the wind into silence, into something that devoured all sound, all life. I tried to stop it, and it trapped me instead." The reflection laughed, a hollow echo. "And now he needs you to finish what he began. Once you awaken the last stone, he will be free, and so will the silence." Lyra's heart ached. She wanted to trust Aaron, but the reflection's words stung like cold wind. She closed her eyes, letting the breeze brush her face. She remembered her grandmother's voice. "The wind gives and the wind takes, but it never lies to those who listen." She whispered, "Then let me hear the truth." The wind rushed around her, warm and fierce. In its sound she heard not words, but feelings, sorrow, hope, regret, love. Aaron's presence filled the air, aching with guilt but pure in heart. Lira opened her eyes. "You made a mistake, Aaron, but you've spent 100 years paying for it. I won't let the silence win because of fear." She faced her reflection. "You are not my truth." Her reflection hissed, its image rippling and breaking apart. "You can't silence me. I am you." "No," Lira said softly, lifting her hands. "You're the part I've outgrown." The 3 relics at her neck began to glow, blue, silver, and amber. Their lights merged, forming a radiant white aura around her. The water beneath her trembled, and the reflection shattered into fragments of light. The sea roared as the tower of wind blazed brighter. Lira stepped forward, placing her hands upon the heart of the first wind. Instantly, a storm erupted around her, light, sound, and memory colliding in a storm of creation. The wind howled with ancient songs, and Aaron's voice rose above them, breaking with emotion. "Lira, no! If you unite the stones, you'll break the veil. The wind's power will need a vessel. It will destroy you." She smiled through the storm. "Then let it. The wind needs a voice again." The stones lifted from her hands, spinning in circles of light. The air shimmered, and the storm reached its peak. Lyra's feet left the ground as her hair lifted in the gale. She closed her eyes and sang, not a song of fear, but one of love, memory, and freedom. Her voice joined the wind, and the entire sea erupted in light. The silence screamed one last time, then dissolved into dust, scattered into the breeze it once devoured. The storm slowly faded. The sea calmed. The sky cleared to a brilliant blue. When Aaron's voice returned, it was soft and full of awe. "You did it, Lira. The wind lives again." She floated gently back to the water's surface. But when she looked down, her reflection no longer mirrored her exactly. Its edges were made of light and air. She could feel the wind flowing through her veins like music. "What's happening to me?" she whispered. Aaron's voice trembled. "You've become what I once was, the guardian of the wind. But your heart is still human. You are the bridge between the worlds now." Lira smiled faintly. "Then I'll carry your song, Aaron. Always." The wind swirled around her, forming his faint image one last time. A boy made of light and air. He looked peaceful now, no longer trapped. "Thank you," he said softly. "You've freed us both." Then he vanished, carried away by the breeze. When the villagers of Eloria awoke that morning, they found the world changed. The air smelled fresher, the trees whispered old songs, and every gust of wind carried faint laughter. Rain fell only where it was needed, and storms sang gentle lullabies instead of rage. At the top of the old windmill, a single feather of light spun endlessly in the breeze. Sometimes, when the night was quiet, people said they could hear a voice there, soft, kind, and full of wonder, singing with the wind. And somewhere beyond the clouds, where the sky met infinity, a young woman drifted with the endless air, her laughter echoing through every whisper that touched the earth. Her name was Lira, the listener of the wind, the keeper of songs, and the guardian of magic reborn. Epilogue: The Whisper That Remained. Years passed, and the legend of Lira became a story mothers told their children when storms came. They said that if you listened closely, you could still hear her voice in the wind, sometimes laughing, sometimes singing, always near. And when a child asked, "What is she saying?" the elders would smile and answer, "She's reminding us that the world still remembers wonder. If only we remember to listen."